Okay, you just heard a sniffle. That's how we're going to start this podcast off. This is probably my favorite guest I've had so far. We've had some wild ones. Jeff Richards.
Oh, he's wild.
Carlos Herrera. Dolph Ziggler's brother. The great Riley Nemeth. But today is a good friend of mine, a great comic, and an amazing author. Author of the book Brain Humor. Get this book. It's on Amazon. The audio book will be on iTunes. Please put your hands together for the one, the only Mr. Matty Goldberg.
Thank you.
All right, that's Matty. What's happening, brother?
Just happy to be here. Very lovely house you have. So a lot of cool metal, heavy metal, and hockey trophies. So
full of '80s artifacts.
Yeah, you don't see that.
What's an era that's long forgotten?
VHS.
Yeah, I've got VHS fight tapes.
I was thinking more of the. We used to go to the Did you ever go to like record shows?
Oh, absolutely.
You'd ask to see like a Kiss bootleg.
Oh, I've got plenty of Kiss bootlegs.
On
I'm
the
sure.
VHS back. This is way before YouTube.
Yeah, I mean there was a store in Westwood called. Started with a Reckless or something that sold bootleg CDs, posters, and I bought every week. I'd buy 4 or 5 Kiss bootlegs and
that's awesome.
VHS tapes, and then one day I saw Mike Douglas, the
reporter.
He was like the Arsenio Hall of the '70s.
Okay, yeah.
And I said, "Hey, I loved seeing Kiss on your show." And he's like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh, I bought this tape at this store." And they had Kiss on the Mike Douglas show. And about 2 hours later, I get a phone call from his lawyer asking me where the store was. And I'm so oblivious. I'm like, oh, it's in Westwood. It's right by the video.
No.
And the next day, the store went out of business.
Is that a true story?
Yeah.
Wow.
So,
that is awful.
And they had the best. I've got so many great. And they had more than Kiss bootlegs.
I know a lot of I know like... I don't know if it's the FBI. I don't think they deal with that. But in the 90s, they would come in and raid stores that were selling bootlegs. In New York, that was a big thing.
Well, it's like, yeah. I guess,
record stores would one day have bootlegs, and the next day they wouldn't.
Well, I think even Virgin Records used to have, in the 90s, import bootlegs that were probably illegal to sell, but it certainly didn't stop me from buying them.
Yeah, they got away with it probably.
And, it's just now that's where everyone goes to get bootlegs, and they're pretty vigilant.
Sure.
At, squashing that, which is too bad. So, I mean, you haven't lived till you've bought a Kiss bootleg from the Lick It Up tour.
Oh, man, that was not their greatest era, but...
Well, yeah.
It's a funny song. Very funny video.
Yeah, and if you notice in that video, they hated Vinnie Vincent so much.
He's not in it?
They purposely, leave him out of the video. I mean, he has to be in the video. He's the guitar player.
Yeah.
But they, do some weird Photoshop where he's not in most of it.
Now I'm going to have to watch it. The one thing I just learned, and I grew up in, New York, so a child of the 80s, I guess, MTV, Hot for Teacher... was filmed. There's an elementary school right next, or a high school right next to my house, and they filmed it there.
Oh, it was one of the first breakout video hits.
I love that video. So now I watch and I'm like, that's the street, because there's a scene where David Lee Roth is driving the car at the end.
Right.
And I'm like, that's like 20 feet from where I live.
I mean, when I was a fitness trainer at Family Fitness Center in Pico, the blonde girl the teacher from the video I used to train her.
No,
she was beautiful.
Can I curse her? No.
Oh yeah. This is no holds barred.
Oh great. Yeah, shit. Oh my God. Those are the days.
This isn't called the Inappropriate Earl cast for nothing.
I'm so happy to be here.
Well, listen, I'm glad to have you here. I mean, we're going to talk comedy. We're going to talk about our favorite movie of all time, 52 Pickup.
I love it.
The 4 on the Floor murders.
Love that, yeah.
But I want to get I don't read books. I think the only book I've read to completion was The Dirt. because the stories were so fascinating.
Oh,
but
so good, yeah.
dude, your book, Brain Humor, is the best book I've ever read. And I'm not. I swear, I'm not. Now I've only read The Dirt, so it's not. It's just an amazing. Everyone should get this book.
I think anybody who does comedy should get this book. I think one of the, not to sell it, but I thought before I wrote it, I read a lot of comedians' memoirs, and they never go into detail of the really awful beginning, the rough start, the horrible road gigs, the open mics, the bringer shows that they have to do, the club manager that's like an asshole to them. So I wanted to like totally bring that to life. Like, this is like this is how you start, and this is how it is. So anybody really that wants to know about stand-up, I think this is really like a crash course of like what it's really like, and most comics will be able to relate to it, as well as other people. Like, wow, I don't want to hate on something, but like the movie Funny People, I don't know if you're a fan of that.
I Taylor Negron.
Yeah, but it's like, okay, here's a movie that's about the business that we're in, and it's so inaccurate of how it's really like, and that bothers me. Like if you're a firefighter and they make a movie about firefighters and it's not like it is, you're pissed. So I wanted to do something that was really like what it is to, go on the road or, work your way up, doing stand-up and all like the ups and downs.
And the awful gigs you have to take.
Oh, yeah. So that like I think there was about 2 other stories that was edited out of the book of like awful gigs. I think one was in Danbury, Connecticut, where the booker brought me and the 2 other comics in the back, and I swear to God, he says, I love race jokes.
Oh.
He's like, black people, spics, chinks, go after them. We love jokes like that. And it was so weird and so bizarre. And there was maybe like 15 people there that were all his friends, and they were so rowdy and drunk, and you're just like, how am I going to get through this? And,
well, he'd fit in well working at some of the comedy clubs in L.A. with that attitude.
Yeah, so, there's also a story like you having to do an hour, at like a place where like you don't have an hour.
Oh, I've been there.
And you kind of like cheat the time, and you're drinking a lot of water, and you're doing the same crowd work over and over.
Yeah, anyone from out of town?
Yeah. And, like, I think I told a story about how, like, a guy had short shorts on. So, like, an obvious joke was, like, I can see your nutsack, which every comic does. But it kept working, so I would just say it all, like, I said it maybe 50 times to him. And that's, like, they laughed at that. So I was like, fuck it. I got to get through this.
Yeah, well, I think people see a show like Last Comic Standing and think it's just, that's comedy.
Yeah.
They don't show at the Holiday Inn.
Yeah.
In front of 10 people.
And then the open mics.
Yeah.
And then, you do these gigs, and, like, I think one time I was really depending on money for rent. And the guy was like, the door is $10. I guarantee, we get 80 people a show, and you get half the door. So I'm thinking I'm going to come home with, like, $400. And 8 people showed up. I drove 4 hours. And, you're like, you feel like you're a professional, and then you get there, you're like, whoa, this is not good.
Yeah, it's $80.
Yeah.
That you probably spent $100 in gas to get to.
I think in the story, I paid the guy to drive me. He was a comic too, so I gave him like the gas money. So I think I came home with like $10.
Yeah.
And I was expecting $400 or something.
It's crazy. Comics are whores. We'll take any gig.
Absolutely.
And, like I know you did the Nerdogram.
Yeah. That's one of the funnier stories.
Tell that story it's in the book.
Okay.
So I don't know if you want to tell too much of what's in the book.
I'll tell that story real fast. So there was this guy who was like this awful agent who was like not really in show business. I guess the best way to describe him is Broadway Danny Rose. And he would have all these awful gigs for my friend, and he just had enough of them, so he would pass them to me. And one was to go roast a woman retiring from a grocery store as a nerd. and I basically had to go there and like make fun of myself and make fun of her. And it was like the middle of Long Island, which is kind of scary. And I had like two things about her, and I had to do like 25 minutes of making fun of her, and I was for $50, and it was weird. It was very surreal.
And that, to people who don't understand about comedy, to do 20 minutes may seem like, oh, that's it. But you burn through your best material because you're nervous in 5 minutes. You still got to do another 15.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when you're on the road. I mean, I'm sure when the crowd just sucks, and like you have like that 25 like with a good crowd. You know, everything works, and you got the pauses and the breaks and the laughs. And when they don't laugh, that 25 minutes is like 12 minutes.
Oh, it can be an hour. I mean, it just could seem like an hour.
But I mean, you're done in 12 minutes.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh my God, what do I do for the next 13 minutes? And you know, you got to do the time. Sometimes they don't even care how good or bad you do. It's like you do the fucking time. So a lot of it's the stories of that, and it's just like also just working your way up and like learning from like really good comics on like just skills and nuances and stuff like that, and kind of developing your own persona and kind of just like forming who you are, which is really cool. So I think I like the chapter about when I was on the road, because I'm kind of like telling the secrets of what I want the crowd to react, you know?
Right.
Which not a lot of comics really ever talk about. It's kind of like a magician telling the secrets, but it's like you set the crowd up, I guess.
Oh, for sure. I mean, you know, I don't have any secrets, you know. I'll do whatever it takes.
Well, I think like you're great because you're yourself. You're the same guy off the stage and on the stage, and I'm not a big fan of comics that scream and yell, you know.
I can't do it. I've tried. You know, I know when Dane Cook was like hot, and it still is, I guess.
Yeah.
Everyone tried to act like him, and
Sure.
I'm incapable of. You know, that's why I like you. You're the same way.
Yeah, I try to be the same like volume all the time.
Yeah, I mean, but you're like as nice as you are off stage, you are on stage. There's no act.
Well, you know the thing is like you kind of okay. I think a lot of what the book also is about is for comics, there is this intense need of validation all the time.
Oh, of course.
So like it's almost a drug where every night you go on stage, it's a fill, like you're getting your fix, and whether you do good or bad, it's like some people like bad trips, you know, like a bad drug trip. So it's still a fix, and there's some time down the road I kind of didn't need that validation. And you see guys that are successful that are still like they need to be told that they're funny to this day, and like they need to like feel that love. And I think I'm happy to say I don't need it. You know, like I'm proud of who I am.
Well, after what you've gone through, surviving cancer and the death of one of your closest friends.
Yeah.
I mean, validation from some idiot, you know, at any show is probably pretty minuscule.
Well, you see weird things like, I don't want to pick on anybody, but like this girl on Facebook for New Year's Eve resolutions, she was dead serious. She was like, number 1, to be famous. Number 2, to be rich. Number 3, and this is a comic.
Right.
And you're like, we're kind of losing focus of like what is important. It's like, let's do what we love to do and like entertain people, and there's no real rhyme or reason why somebody is famous or somebody's not. So let's just have fun, you know? And that I'm not the best at like practicing what I preach, but my friend in it who passed away, Angelo Bowers, in the book, was that guy, you know, that was really hysterical and really talented, but really never really cared that much about like fame or fortune or like huge accolades or like how many people love them. It was just like, I get to tell jokes, I get to entertain these people, and that's like the greatest gift. And I learned a lot from that, you know.
Oh, Angelo was the funniest dude I've ever known.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely.
He was almost like Mitch Hedberg, where how did they come up with that? You know, it's just
And one thing about him too is he was so funny on stage, and off stage, if he wanted to be, he could be hysterical. But he was such a good guy that
Yeah.
he let his friends like be the star off stage. So like when I was writing it, I had a really good editor, and I was writing stories about just us hanging out. And she's like, "Well, Angelo's not saying much, you know." And I'm like, "Yeah, because he wanted to make me feel really good."
Yeah.
And that's how he did with all his friends. Like he let his friends he would set his friends up to be really funny, off stage or just like joking around. Like he wanted to make them feel like really good. And that's like I've never seen anybody like that.
And probably the nicest dude out in or out of comedy. I've just such a great heart, which is why it sucked so. First the cancer, and then
Yeah, I never it's weird because I've met so many like ruthless bastards in comedy, and like I was telling you before, like some of the funniest guys I met when I was starting in New York, like guys I looked up to, and I would be like, "Wow, you have the best life," and they were so miserable.
Oh, for sure.
And they were like, "This sucks. I hate my life," And then I met him, and I was like, "Well, he's so funny. He's got to be like cutthroat. He's got to be ruthless." And then I met him, and he was like I explained in the book, the first time I saw him, like he did great, and all these people were patting him and like congratulating him, and he was almost like apologizing for doing good. He was almost embarrassed for making people laugh so hard, and it was like I really took a step back. I didn't really get it,
Yeah, he was. I remember seeing him at the Comedy Store during Potluck, which is probably the worst show in the country in terms of audience reaction.
Yeah.
Just killing. And it's like, who? Everyone stopped in their tracks. It's like, who is this guy? He was just so far ahead of everyone else in that room. And I know in your book you used to tell him, "What are you doing at these shitty open mics?"
Yeah.
But I think it was like,
oh, he loved it.
Yeah.
He loved it just because it was like there was something about just telling jokes to an audience that was very beautiful, and he never like judged anybody. Like anybody who went on stage was like a winner to him. Like you're doing it, you're a winner, and like he made people feel really, really good. Like there's a lot of open micers. They're lifers. We call it.
yeah.
They've been doing open mics for 25 years, and their stuff is kind of crude and whatnot, but he would like make those guys feel like they were really special, and they were like honored to perform with him. And everybody was like, "You got to do this. If you got a Facebook page, if you did this, you'd be huge. If you put a video on, you'd be huge." And he just never really.
He was like the anti-promotion man.
Yeah, which is so bizarre because stand-up is all about promotion.
Yeah.
That's half the game, if not more than half the game.
Especially in LA. I don't know what it's like in New York, but like
it's the same.
Like they always talk about Poison in the 80s.
Yeah.
Poison was
With
not
the
the
Flyers.
best. Yeah, they were not the best band to make it.
But they had the Flyers.
But they were the promotional kings.
Yeah. I heard a story that the bass player like beat up another guy in another band because he put a flyer over his flyer.
Yeah.
And like put him in the hospital or something.
And this was before, MySpace and Facebook and Twitter, so,
But it's the same thing.
Yeah,
and it's the same, like it's just technology has changed. But it inspired me like just to love myself. I went, because I did have a brain tumor, which I talk about in the book, and I went through a lot. And for years, and this is what sucks, and I'm cool enough to admit it, is that you want to succeed because you want to show fucking assholes in high school that
Sure.
Like look at me, motherfucker. Like look what I'm doing. You were a dick to me or whatever. Even comics, when I started it, there was a lot of bullies, and you're like, I'm not gonna quit. And it's good motivation, but it's not the proper. It's not the real right reason to do things. And
right.
We're all guilty of this. We're all like looking at what other people have, and you're just like, oh man, I can't believe he got this, or I can't, this guy's on this, and it can drive anybody nuts. And that's, with Ange, that was like, he never even knew about anybody doing anything, or if he did, he would just be like, oh, that's great,
He didn't care.
And then you would just you would feel kind of silly,
Well, I mean, I'm guilty of the same thing. Like, I know you talked about auditioning for Montreal and doing well, and I had the same experience where you think, I got a shot.
Yep.
And then you see who gets it.
Yeah.
And they're probably your friends. And we didn't even get a call back.
Yeah, you can't really help it. I mean, it's only normal. It's so I mean, it's like, because we comedy is so instant gratification. We work so hard on the jokes, and we want to be appreciated, and it's like, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I mean, at some point you want someone to say, hey, you're good enough to be on the Carson Daly show.
Absolutely. And some people get it and some people don't. And I think what people realize, though, there's no real rhyme or reason why anybody gets anything anymore. It's a whole crapshoot of music is like that too. It's like being at the right place at the right time.
Oh, for sure. I mean, at this point, I'd like to get on the Byron Allen show.
Yeah. I love how he sets things up.
Yeah. So, Matty, I hear you had a brain tumor.
Oh, that's funny you should ask. And then just do the bit.
Yeah, but as bad as that show is, I would still like to be on it.
Absolutely. Me too.
I think you and I are the only two comics in the city who weren't on Comics Unleashed.
Yeah.
We weren't leashed to the general audience.
It is great setups, though.
Oh, they're the best in the business. But I would literally see like open micers on that show and go, how did they get on?
I don't know. Is this even still on the air?
Well, I think he changes the name of it every few years, so people think it's a new show.
That's hysterical.
It was Comics Unleashed, and then it was After Dark with Byron Allen, and then, and I used to live in the same building as his mom, and I'd see him in the lobby.
Oh, that's funny.
And he'd be like, I don't know, man.
Is he a comic or?
I think he used to be.
Well, he's got a good gig going, so.
There's so many of those not older, but I guess he's a little older, like 70s and 80s guys. Yeah. He was on that show Real People.
I don't remember that one.
Which was like a variety show in the 80s, and I think once you get TV gigs like that, you quit doing stand-up. So.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing too. Like, I read a lot of stand-up memoirs. And like everybody from like Lisa Lampanelli to Steve Martin and all these people, and they never wrote about like the beginning of stand-up. It goes right to like, I'm hanging with this celebrity and this celebrity. I'm at this award show. Like the days of working your way up is like so painful that nobody wants to write about it.
Yeah, I mean, I want to hear about Steve Martin hanging with Boone Shakalaka.
Yeah, or it's just I don't know. I just felt like it's really fascinating, like the whole world.
Oh, the struggle. That's why I liked your book so much. I mean, I can relate to it.
Yeah. Just
the shitty gigs and the long hours and like your regular day job of.
Oh yeah.
Cleaning up animal feces.
Yeah. I worked at an animal hospital, and that was rough, but it was like I had this boss that she was never going to fire me because she didn't want to pay unemployment. So
right.
If I didn't want to come in, I just never went in. So I kind of make my own hours. And then like when you get like the stand-up bug, that's all you think about. So like as I'm working, I'm still like trying jokes on the people I worked with, and they never really got it. And you're just thinking about your next show. And that's a cool, like the first few years is so fun. It's so, because every show is life and death.
Yeah.
Like you're the greatest goddamn thing in the world, and if you bomb, you suck, and you should kill yourself.
I've been there.
There's no well, you're working on an act. It's either you kill or you bomb.
Yeah, nothing in between.
Yeah, and then you learn. You're like, nowadays, like if I do bad, it's like, it wasn't really my crowd. Nothing I can do about it.
Yeah, it was the crowd, not my dick joke. That.
Yeah. Well, I'm not blaming the crowd. I'm just saying, like, you're not for everybody, So it's like, I'm not gonna sit there and cry or like a lot of guys when they bomb, they're like, fuck you guys. You guys suck. That was funny. I'm not gonna. I like to gracefully tank.
I say that just to myself, though. I won't, I'm like,
Yeah.
you guys don't get a joke about a Night Ranger video? Fuck you. But now we originally bonded, not necessarily over comedy,
No.
but our love of one of the greatest murder trials ever.
Absolutely.
It was the OJ trial for me because I lived in the city where it happened. John Holmes, the Four on the Floor murders.
Yeah.
Wonderland Avenue, Eddie Nash.
Oh, so many great characters.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I liked it. With the OJ trial, you just had Kato Kalin,
Yeah.
who was a great character, super nice guy.
Of course, went into stand-up.
Yeah, and headlines over,
Yeah.
people who've been doing it for 20 years.
Yeah.
Which, it's got to kill these veteran headliners.
Yeah.
Like, wait a minute, this guy is basically headlining because he lived at a double murderer's garage. It's kind of like when David Arquette won the championship belt in WCW.
Yeah, that was a scam.
I mean, you take a guy like, say, Sting, who'd been wrestling for 30 years, going, what have I busted my hump? Basically doing wrestling open mics to get to this point where David Arquette is now the WCW, who's also getting into comedy now.
Ugh.
He's funny, though. I'm telling you.
All right.
He's got great stories.
I'm sure.
He needs to tighten it up a bit.
Yep.
But,
well, I'll check him out.
yeah, he's at the Comedy Store late nights.
He's no longer married to.
Now here's the weird thing. He's no longer married to Courtney Cox, but he's a producer on her show, Cougar Town.
Interesting.
So that's interesting that they could get along.
Sure.
To work,
Well, I'm sure she has no trouble. They both have no trouble finding new people.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. I'm sure neither one is hurting for dates. But let's get back to.
Yeah, of course.
This is the problem with my podcast. I take it in every direction.
I'm sorry, that was my fault.
No, that's my fault.
Okay.
But for those of you who don't know, if you've ever seen the movie Boogie Nights, the scene where Marky Mark, he'll always be Marky Mark to me, robs the Arab wacko.
One of the best scenes ever.
Yeah, it was loosely based on the Four on the Floor murders.
Yeah.
And then I know Eric Bogosian was
Eddie Nash.
Eddie Nash
Did a great job.
I thought he did a little bit better than Alfred Molina.
Well, Alfred Molina was playing like something
Arab.
That was kind of based on it, but not him.
Right, and of course, Faison Love, the very funny comic, was Greg Dials.
Who passed away.
I mean, there's just so many layers to this. Just got the porn involvement. You've got...
For me, the funniest thing or something that when anybody tells me they're from Glendale, I say, oh, that's where John Holmes was from, or lived. And now everybody goes, who? And then I tell them the story.
Yeah, I mean...
So I'm obsessed with John Holmes.
Well, I mean, he's such a, now I guess Ron Jeremy carried the torch after John Holmes. And Ron Jeremy's a little more out there, mainstream. I mean, John Holmes was pretty much just did porn and...
But there's something about John Holmes because he was an informant against porn. So here he is. He's the biggest porn star, but he's also busting other porn actors and directors. He's this terrible drug dealer with this 13, 14-year-old girlfriend. I mean, he's probably one of the most vile, interesting human beings that's ever lived on the planet.
Yeah.
And he just happens to have this humongous, penis. And he's not a good-looking guy, and he just became this giant star in the face of an industry that started booming, and then he blew it all with drugs.
I mean, he really lucked out. When his star was rising, his porn almost was mainstream for a while.
I mean, he was a household name for a while, and what's interesting is he's also he lies a lot, and he would say he was in UCLA and he was an architect and all this stuff, and he was a pathological psychopath that somehow made it for a little while, and then of course just it went all to shit, unfortunately.
Well, yeah, when you rob Eddie Nash.
Well, here's the other thing I always find fascinating is the guys that robbed Eddie Nash, their stories are incredible too. I mean, the guy Ron Lanius, he supposedly killed like 20 or 30 people. Like he was a hitman, and like he was a Vietnam vet. Supposedly his wife or girlfriend was captured in Mexico, and he just went down there and he just went crazy and grabbed her and brought her back. Like he was a ruthless guy.
Yeah, I mean it was, and it wasn't Greg Dials, Eddie Nash's bodyguard was
Yeah.
like a kung fu,
Yeah.
or I guess you'd say martial arts.
Yeah,
and-
he was just a big dude that like opens the door, like counts the money, counts the coke. He's the muscle for Eddie Nash.
and Eddie Nash was just,
Another
Dude.
great story.
yeah, I mean Arab, Palestinian immigrant.
Who comes there with nothing, who opens a little hot dog stand, and then ends up owning every huge nightclub in L.A.
And I think where Jimmy Kimmel Live is filmed,
Was the Seven Seas?
yeah.
Is that what it's called?
Well, he owns so many yeah, it's wherever Jimmy Kimmel Live is
I think
taped
it's
now.
called the Seven Seas. And it was a club, and then the Starwood, and then there's a couple other I think gay clubs he owned. And he was the first to like let. I'm a punk fan. He was the first to let a lot of punk bands play. He didn't care about like the music, like if it was violent or not. I know the Whiskey. They banned a lot of bands, but he didn't give a as long as people showed up.
Yeah.
He was cool with it.
Which, if you look at the acts that played the Starwood, you had bands like Van Halen, Quiet Riot, when they had Randy Rhoads, Cheap Trick, and then punk bands. So
Yeah, I heard that there was like 2 rooms and like a small stage and then a big stage, and it was like to get a gig there was like the big thing in LA, like for an up and coming band. And dealing with him, he was always a really intimidating guy. Like he ran the city. Like he was very corrupt, but he also had like the fire department in his hand. He had the police. Like nobody wanted to mess with him. He was very powerful, and then John Holmes got these guys to rob him because he had a lot of drugs, and that was we know what happens next.
yeah, I mean Eddie Nash is not someone you want to fuck over in a deal, or I guess it wasn't even a deal, but he had a very long reach.
And that's what's crazy about, because the word is, I don't know if this is true, but they knew it was John Holmes because he was wearing Eddie Nash's jewelry the next day.
Yeah, and then I guess Greg Dials picked him up on like Santa Monica Boulevard.
Yep. And brought him back to the house.
They threatened to kill his family.
Yep.
And so they had him leave open the kitchen door
Yep.
at the other people who robbed him. And then I think we know what happened next.
And then the crazy thing is, the guy that they made a movie about on HBO that was Liberace's lover is a witness to everything, because he was there at Eddie Nash's house doing coke while they were beating up John Holmes.
And I was disappointed in the Liberace movie that they didn't. I mean, I know it really didn't have much to do with Liberace, but they didn't go into that a little bit more.
Yeah, I
like-
wish they did. Do you think that stuff goes on today?
Well, I mean, there's really the whole club scene in LA is so different. I don't
Yeah.
think there's a guy like Eddie Nash around.
Sure. I mean, New York, growing up, we had a guy, Peter Gatien. I don't know if you know.
I've heard of him.
He owned the Limelight, so he didn't care. Like everybody knew he was dealing, it was drugs and stuff. But he was pretty like, he was kind of like the Eddie Nash. But I don't think there was a crazy rave murder in New York in the '90s, but nothing like the 4 on the floor thing.
But I mean, like right now in LA, I mean, where Gazzarri's used to be is, I think Jay-Z just bought it.
It's so sad.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, especially if you drive down the strip, I mean, the rainbow is still there.
I wish I could be, if I, like some people, if they could have a time machine, it would be somewhere like, I don't know. But I would go to the 80s to just walk down the strip in like 1984.
Oh, yeah.
That would be so cool.
Because I think people forget, like, you had 2 eras of entertainment popping at the same time, 80s metal and stand-up.
Yep.
So you could literally go see a Rat, Van Halen,
Before they made it.
and then go to the Comedy Store or the Improv, I guess.
But just to be in like, I would love to see like the Rainbow Room, like 1 a.m.
Oh, it was crazy. I mean,
like girls and all the bands, and just be a fly on the wall and see like the debauchery and the insanity.
yeah, I mean, there'll never be another era like that. You know, just it was, the economy was good. Cocaine. There was, I wouldn't say it was pre-AIDS, but I mean, AIDS still was kind of a mystery.
Sure.
So people were fucking.
Yep.
And just. And you had, the Troubadours on Santa Monica Boulevard. You had that. You had Gazares. You had the Whiskey, the Roxy. I think in Santa Monica there was a club where Guns N' Roses cut their teeth. The Madame Wong's.
And all these bands, all these kids would move out here to. I mean, I don't think it's like that anymore. Where I'm sure some musicians moved to L.A., but not like the '80s.
Well, yeah, it's all pay-to-play bands now.
But I'm like, there must have been a ratio like maybe 10 kids to 1 kid now.
Yeah, oh, for sure.
That moves to LA to be like a rock star. Like you could be a rock star. Like, Axl Rose was really a kid from Indiana.
Yeah.
Who got off a bus just like the video and
Bam. I mean, and this is when any band was getting signed. It was like literally throw enough shit against the wall and see.
Gold Rush.
Yeah, I mean. That's why, but that's kind of what killed the industry. You had like
too much too much of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean the copycat bands were getting copycatted. Like you had Cinderella, and then you had Britney Fox.
Yeah.
And then you had bands trying to copy Britney Fox, and then it was like this is crazy.
And then like the Wingers came a little late.
I mean, the Winger is one of my guilty pleasures.
Sure.
Because I don't think people really know how talented they were.
And I think that when the guy talks about the apple pie or the cherry pie.
Yeah, Warrant. Come on.
Warrant. My bad.
Well, that video made
Winger. Oh, yeah. Winger's Kip Winger.
Winger did She's Only 17.
Yeah, that was funny.
Which was like a.
Okay.
When
I was a kid, we used to make fun of that because we were like, he never plays the bass in the video.
Yeah, I mean.
He just like dances and then he hits one note.
Well, that's pretty much. Well, he was actually a talent. He was the bass player in Alice Cooper's band before Winger hit, and so he had the chops. But he was such a good-looking guy.
Yeah.
That I think whoever was producing that video was like, "Hey, listen."
I mean, we used a lot when I was like 13 or 14. We like, we got, excuse me, I didn't get your number.
Yeah.
Oh, it was love at first sight. That's a little.
That sounds better than he sang it. I mean,
probably, but he never touched the bass.
Well, yeah. Well, I mean,
And then the other video, Headed for a Heartbreak, he never really touched the bass either.
Or Miles Away.
I never saw that one.
That's a good video.
I gotta check that out.
It's a very soppy, Desmond Childish ballad, and that was my first. My first concert was Springsteen.
Okay.
But my first metal concert was Long Beach Arena, Kiss, Winger, and Slaughter.
Wow.
And what was your first concert?
Okay, let me think. My dad was a pretty cool dad, so he would go with me. Shoot. I'm trying to think. I used to see a lot of bad punk bands. Maybe like Bad Religion or something.
That's cool.
When I was like 14 or 15. They played at a VFW hall outside of New York City. Like maybe 200 people. And then the next album they got like really big. And I would go to like a lot of the hardcore.
Right.
Like New York was very big in the hardcore. So I was like Sick of It All. You remember them?
Mm-hmm.
Who else is big? Gorilla Biscuits. Do you know them?
I've heard of them, but I'm not. I'm kind of a pussy with my musical taste.
Yeah, we were all into that. Like all the, like New York was like all about tough, and we saw LA as like pussies.
Well, that's probably pretty accurate.
But you guys were getting laid, and we were like, jumping on top of each other. Like just a lot of sweaty guys. Like moshing.
Yeah, I mean, we were more into the striper
and getting girls and stuff.
Well, yeah, that's I think why most guys get into bands. It's not.
But those bands weren't really into girls. like they were more into like it was just guys jumping on top of it. You know, like they would just mosh and do stage dives and
Yeah.
you know like it was just it was 99% guys in the crowd and 1% girl.
And I'm guessing that 1% were not an attractive lot.
Or maybe a lesbian.
Right.
Who had a lot of tattoos, who was like, would go in the pit and be like, I can do what you guys can do. It wasn't like any kind of sexual tension of any sort.
Well, I mean, probably the most hardcore band I ever got into was Motorhead.
Yeah, and they're kind of loved by everybody. Like, they're loved and respected.
They're playing Coachella this year.
Yeah.
Which is, I don't know if
that's so weird.
I don't know if the hipsters are. I think they'll give them a chance.
Yeah, there's a band I love called The Replacements.
Oh, they're great.
Who's a rock kind of punk band I love, and they're playing this year, and I'm like, nobody's gonna get them.
Well,
They're
yeah, I
80s
mean,
band.
but I don't know. Coachella seems to be reaching out to like.
They want to be like diverse, but I couldn't go. I'm not a festival like camper.
Yeah, I mean, I've been to one festival, Rocklahoma.
Oh, so that was like all the 80s bands.
Oh yeah, 2007. I thought, okay, I'll go the first year because these bands will be so happy to play in front of a huge crowd.
Sure.
And then each year, I figure it's going to get worse, and they'll want more money, and that's exactly what happened. But the first year was great, Rat.
I think I saw Rat on YouTube at Rocklahoma.
Yeah, they play it every year.
What I love about you is like today in the world of comedy, like there's this whole new style of like you basically shit on anything that's not cool, and that's like the style is like. So my uncle, he listens to Warren, and he was like cherry pie and ha ha ha, what a loser, because I love whatever band is cool. But like you wear the flag.
I embrace it.
You have pride and like and that's awesome.
Like I get shit on so much for Rat being my favorite band.
Yeah,
and
but people don't know how hard they rock. Like they had some really good songs. Like the musicianship is it's. We get lost in the outfits and the videos, but like people don't know like you don't fuck around with Warren DeMartini.
Yeah, I mean he is a definitely one of the top guitar players of his time.
I mean George Lynch is another guy.
Oh my God, rocking with Dokken.
Nobody can play guitar better than him. I never was a Dokken. I thought was kind of boring.
Right.
But he's one of the greatest guitarists.
Well, that's like, you see like Rolling Stone do their top 100 guitar players. You don't see a George Lynch or a Jakey Lee, who's like my favorite.
Uh-huh.
I mean.
But that's awesome that you like so many people are like, if they like it, they hide it.
Not me, man.
Like I know people that hide, like they love it and they hide it and they break it out when maybe somebody likes it with them, but they hide that shit. So I think it's awesome.
I mean, I am very open and out of the closet about my love of Vinnie Vincent, just because no one likes that guy. I mean, he's completely insane.
Is he just such a jerk that he's so hard to work with?
I mean, well, it's a tough question to answer, but when your name is Vinnie Vincent and you get kicked out of the Vinnie Vincent invasion...
Oh my God, that's hysterical.
You gotta be a dick.
I remember like I would buy all the magazines like Circus and Rip, and you had that big. It was just the purple VVI, and it was like so epic.
Oh, well, I mean, I'm just, because his history is now. You talk about the 4 on the Floor murders being crazy.
Yeah,
his history. He starts out as writing jingles on Happy Days. Then he gets hooked up with Dan Hartman, who was the guy who sang that song, I Can Dream About You.
Oh, okay, so that's really poppy.
And then he goes to Kiss, gets kicked out of Kiss 3 times.
Oh, my Lord.
Forms Vinnie Vincent Invasion. They bail on him after 2 albums, and they form Slaughter. And then he puts out a box set on cassette, which is like, that's insane.
Yeah.
I bought it.
A box set on cassette.
No one does that.
How many cassettes were in it?
6. Here's the thing. I get the box set. I open it up. There were no cassettes. He ripped me off.
So you like through his website or something?
Yeah, it's like VinnieVincent.com.
Lord.
And he did that to a lot of fans. And then he resurfaces, starting wearing the Kiss makeup at Kiss conventions.
Oh, no.
And then his ex-wife, and this isn't funny, but it's the mother of his children.
Sure.
She was a prostitute in Connecticut.
Oh.
She ends up being chopped to pieces.
Oh, no.
And so that, he kind of, went nuts. And then I think about 2 years ago, the cops raid his home and find all these dead dogs in Tupperware containers.
Ugh.
Like he was such a...
Now I'm fascinated by him.
And his music is like so like over the top 80s.
Yeah.
10-minute guitar solos on a 4-minute song. And he's just an enigma.
I mean, also growing up, I think the Decline of Western Civilization 2, the great interview with Chris Holmes, like we all thought he'd be dead by now, and I guess he's still going. And he was another whack job.
Yeah, I mean, he's such an interesting guy. He actually stopped my friend from being an alcoholic. My friend was a pretty severe drinker, and we're at the Rainbow one night. Chris Holmes looks at us, and he looks at my friend and goes, "Bro, you remind me a lot of me."
And that was Scared Straight.
My friend never had a drink after that night.
Did he see the video of him in the pool?
Yeah, I mean, that's any metal fan, I think, has seen that.
I wanted to do a parody of that for my book.
You should, man.
Yeah.
A second edition.
Like I would, somebody would interview me like, "How many books have you sold?" And I'd be in leather pants in the pool,
drinking vodka,
and I'd get my mom to be in it. I mean, that is such a. I don't like. Some people say that was staged or whatever, but that was when you're like 12 years old watching that. That's really scary.
I don't think that was staged. I'm guessing that was real booze.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen Chris Holmes walking around the strip. It's pretty, it's kind of sad.
And he's another guy. He's from Glendale.
Yeah. I mean, he put out a music video, I think about 6 months ago, that was just him on a green screen. And nothing on the green screen. It was just like...
Oh, that's hysterical.
It was just like him playing this pretty bad song. And, he got into trouble a couple of years ago when they asked his opinion. Someone asked his opinion on Slash.
Oh.
And he's like, well, I don't think N-Words should play the guitar.
Oh, boy.
So there you go.
Yeah.
He'll fit in perfect in the LA comedy scene.
Yeah.
So...
This is one of the coolest interviews I've ever done, just by the way.
Well, there's so much. There's no format here. I mean,
and it's like just us talking about what we would talk about, which is really interesting stuff.
Because I find that most podcasts, they're just standard questions. So tell me your inspiration behind the book, and
sure.
Try and tell me about Angelo's death and how it affected you. And
but it is odd that we not only we love Four on the Floor, we love a movie like. I'll be like, "Hey, have you ever heard this movie?" And you're like, "That's my
52 pickup."
And you show me the box autographed, so it's not like you just don't like it; you love it.
Well, I just was so obsessed. 52 Pickup's a great movie with a tremendous cast.
Great cast.
Roy Scheider, married to Anne Margaret, being blackmailed by 3. I know they would never get Oscars for their roles. But 3, the best bad guys, Clarence Williams III, John Glover, and Robert Trebor, as this gang that couldn't shoot straight, blackmailing Roy Scheider with Kelly Preston.
Oh, she's gorgeous in it.
And some great cameos by like Ron Jeremy and Jamie Gillis.
And the girl that was with Prince.
Yeah, Vanity, prime Vanity, right before she found God.
Yeah.
I mean, I think...
Yeah, it's one of those movies where you watch the bad guys because they're so interesting, and you go right on IMDb to see what else they're in, and you're disappointed because they're not in a lot of like Robert Traber was only in like 4 or 5 other movies.
Yeah,
and he plays like this nebbish, like the third guy, so he's kind of like bullied by the other bad guys, and he's sweating. He sweats so much, and he's like when he's confident, he's like. Like that the little guy that when somebody's down, he kicks him.
Oh, he was just played the nervous, almost Woody Allen, Jewy.
And then he gives in so fast.
Yeah.
And then he's like, I didn't do anything, I swear.
I didn't tell him.
You're great. You're good. We should be a team.
Stop whimpering.
Yeah.
And then John Glover.
Oh, so good.
Any future acting students who want to play a bad guy role, you must see 52 Pickup. He just had this good looking. He was a very good looking guy, but this
doesn't yell.
Yeah, just this James Bond coolness, and
like there's a scene in the beginning where the point is they're blackmailing Roy Scheider because he's having an affair. So they have a video of him with his mistress, and the guy is narrating it, and he's like, "Oh, look at that! You got good taste.
You got nice taste in broads, Mitch.
Yeah, I'm taking her to a $40 hotel, Mitch. I expect a little more from you."
Shallot Lodge Motel is not a bad place. About 40 a night.
And then he shows videos of his wife. He's like, "Oh, look at her. She's keeping real fit for you, Mitch.
You got to stay in shape chasing that young pussy." So, and then just, so it's just, I know we're like, people are like, what the fuck are these guys talking about at this juncture? Good. But you really, first of all, buy Brain Humor, the book. I mean, that's the real reason Matty's here.
I appreciate it. It means so much. I mean, just what you've done, like telling people and like tweeting means. I mean,
but it's I'm a very selfish person. I'm the first to admit that.
I'll be honest though. Like, I thought like maybe this is weird for me to say because it's bad, but like I thought like this would be something that would really like put me on the map. Or like make me financially, like it would be something that like I could be a writer. And,
right.
And it might not happen, it's really hard to, whatever you do as an artist to make a living. But I also say like, you know what, like whoever gets it, and that's the most beautiful thing. And, that I'm really proud of that. I'm just like, it's good to get like a lot of letters. I've gotten a lot of letters from like this woman, her 6-year-old son has a brain tumor. So she really liked it. And, this girl wrote me and she's like, my boyfriend has an inoperable tumor and, we're reading it. So like, that's like really awesome, so.
I mean, it's an amazing, and it's just, I tell you, the last like 70 pages I was crying.
Yeah.
And just because, I mean, I don't know, I think even if you didn't know Angelo, you will cry because you do such a perfect job of his portrait. And it just,
yeah.
I
think when people read it, they will definitely go on YouTube. There's some Angelo sets, and they'll want to know like more about him and
I mean, he's
hear his jokes. Unfortunately, a lot of the sets online are like really small places, so they don't really do him justice. But just like, like what a friend, like what a great friend is that I never had before. I never had a friend like that was so like cared about you and so giving and so was all about like just having a really sweet time.
Yeah, he was like, I mean, just words don't describe what a great dude he was, and just even when he was really sick, and you knew just by physically looking at him that he wasn't maybe feeling great, he would still hug you and give you that fucking Angelo Bear hug, and it's just, I mean, I don't know one I'm sure there's even a few people who might say a bad word about you or me out there. I don't know who they would be, but no one on this earth could say a bad word about
and
Angelo.
That's the other thing too, like you would have to check your, like if you're like a jerk at a comedy club and you like to, there's comics that like to, like take shots at younger guys, like you couldn't do that around them because you would feel like an asshole because he never like said anything or like preached anything, but he conducted himself in such a manner like, well, if the funniest guy in the room is so like good and peaceful and here for the right reasons, how can I be a jerk? And I would see a lot of guys that were like kind of dicks like around him would really like be embarrassed by themselves and wouldn't show that side when he was around. And it wasn't because he would say anything, it was just his presence was that strong.
He was just, I mean, like I think you said it, like usually the funniest guys are kind of dicks or they got some personality disorder.
Yeah, well, they're just really bitter too. Like they walk off the stage, like they'll kill and you'll be like, man, you were funny, and they're like, it doesn't fucking matter. I got $50 for this fucking show,
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, like you kind of like, you want to like be really like, wow, and like enjoy the moment and really let them know that they were great, and then they kind of like shit on the moment.
Yeah.
And he was he was well. He wasn't. He was hard. It was hard for him to take compliments because he was so embarrassed because he was so humble. But he just loved performing with his friends and hanging out, and we would do a lot of road shows where we'd be stuck in traffic and it didn't matter because it would be more time to hang out with him and just kind of joke around and be silly and whatnot.
It was like just by brain humor, you'll learn. I mean, Matty's a great dude. You'll learn about Angelo. You'll learn about the how to deal with cancer, how to beat it.
Well, that's all luck. I'll just say, it's a flip of the coin. And I'm very fortunate. I'm very blessed. It's just I'm very lucky.
Well, but I mean, it's yeah. I mean, I lost my mom to cancer, so. Yeah. She didn't exactly go to the doctors when she should have. But
my dad as well, and I appreciate that. It's.
But I mean, you. I think whether you beat it or not, it's the mental. Fortitude you have to fight it, no matter what the outcome is more than I ever have in my life. But you're one of my favorite comics.
Thank you, Earl.
And favorite people. I don't even look at you as a comic. I just look at you as
I don't want to even feel like a comic.
But you are, though, dude. I mean,
it's a weird stigma but never mind.
No, you're right, because so many people say they're comics. It's like people who do podcasts. There's so many podcasts. There's so many comics out there. It's like, someone who maybe isn't the best at either is like, dude, you're not a comic. Yeah. Matty Goldberg's a comic.
I appreciate it so much.
Angelo's a comic. He's probably funnier dead than all of us alive. So now you got some shows coming up. Where can people see you?
I want to plug I'm going to be in San Francisco, February 16th and 17th. And the 16th, I'm doing a small set at the Punchline, just like a little guest set. And then the 17th, I'm doing the Milk Bar, which is a cool place, I guess. And I'm going to read a chapter. And it's cool because Angelo is from Modesto, and his mother is going to come up for that.
Oh, that's awesome.
And she's the best because I told her I was going to write this book, and I asked her for permission, and then I let her read what I wrote because I want her to be just like anything I wrote about him. I want her to approve it, and she was just like, do what you have to do, and that means the world. And she really likes it. She says it makes her cry, which is tough, but she said it really means a lot to her because, we still talk because she still likes that connection with all his comic buddies.
Sure.
So the 17th, it's the Milk Bar, and I'll read a chapter, and I'll have some books to sign and stuff like that. And then if you go to MattyGoldberg.com, I should have some dates in L.A., and I should be getting back on the stand-up horse. And it's all for the love. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, it ain't for the money because there ain't no money in this business. But we're going to have Matty back, and this podcast will actually air before those dates. So please go to San Francisco if you're in the Northern California area. Go on MattyGoldberg.com just to see where he's at in L.A. I tell you, I don't like a lot of people. I'm so fucking selfish. I don't plug anyone's products or ideas because I'm jealous that I didn't come up with them first. But please go to Amazon. Can you get it on MattyGoldberg.com too?
In a week you can. I've actually ran out of books.
That's great.
I sign them and then I mail them out. But right now, Amazon and Barnes & Nobles, and then in a week, maybe when this comes out, if you just go to MattyGoldberg.com, it has all the links to everything.
And please, I know I've said it 10 times, buy this book. Even if you don't like comedy or whatever, you will find something in this book you like. So this has been another... We're going to have Matty back, talk about hockey and white people. And
I'd love to come back right before the playoffs.
Yeah, we're going to do a whole...
I'll give you my predictions.
I mean, we got the Kings made a trade today. Ben Scrivens, the professor, is now a goalie for the Edmonton Oilers. Of course, by the time this podcast airs, this will be probably 3 weeks old. So it's like the hockey news.
Yeah.
You get the hockey news at the newsstand, and they're just covering the Gretzky trade in '88. So MattyGoldberg.com, brain humor. This has been another podcast, the Inappropriate Earl cast. We'll be on iTunes. And please check out Matty Goldberg. If I got to say it 20 more times, I'll say it 21 more times. That is all, folks. Thank you for listening. Write a review for us on iTunes.